Hi, and welcome to the Organic Beehive. In today's video, I'm going to share a personal experience that is continuing on with this miscarriage slash fertility issue of mine, and I'm giving you a close look into my experience with the HSG test. Now, the HSG test, from what I know and from what I've read, it is a pretty routine test that OBGYNs or fertility specialists will perform on their patients who are struggling with a fertility issue. So there are two things that the test looks at. The first thing is it's looking at your fallopian tubes to make sure that nothing is blocked and that eggs are able to get through. And the second thing it tests for is it's really just looking at the shape of your uterus and seeing if it is normal. Now, my fertility specialist suggested this test for me just because I have been having recurring miscarriages. I've been pregnant 5 times and one of them was full term, and that was many years ago. With our last miscarriage and with my age, I just kind of decided I wanted to make sure that everything was okay. I'm just taking these tests for myself and for my family to make sure that we could still carry another baby full term. And that's really why I'm seeing a fertility specialist, is because I did go with an OBGYN first, and they had looked at some of, I had a blood test done, routine blood test when I was pregnant, and when I showed her the results, it had like thyroid levels checked, progesterone levels checked, like any antibodies because I'm Rh negative, that was checked, and everything came back normal. My progesterone level was low, but that could have been I had already started losing the baby. The reason why the OBGYN suggested a fertility specialist was looking at on the surface at some of the blood test results, she couldn't see anything wrong. So that's why we're kind of going further into some of this testing, just to get a clearer picture on if I should keep trying. Because as you know, I have a daughter and I don't want to continue this emotional roller coaster if I do not have to. This is all just precautionary. Today, I am going in to get the HSG test, otherwise known as the dye test. I'm gonna just kind of share how I'm feeling because I haven't done the test yet. I'm very nervous, and here's why. When I first talked to the specialist, she told me this is just a regular procedure that we do, and I didn't think much of it. But then, of course, I want to mentally prepare and I want to know the risks, which they were very upfront about. I can't really say that they didn't leave anything out. It's just out of my own curiosity. Of course, I had to go on to Google and read all the things. And I feel like I am prone to anxiety. And so you start reading all these bad experiences and this and that happened and it was so painful, and automatically I just start to shut down. Like, I don't want this test. I really don't need this test. I could just continue on with my life, but I don't want to live with any regrets. That's really what it comes down to. In 5-10 years, am I going to regret not looking into this further? If I get the green light that everything's okay, then cool, we're going to continue. But if I don't get that green light, you know, at least we know now, and we don't have to keep going through the pregnancy loss. That's where I am at. I started reading Google and bad experiences, and that's just where you go wrong. With this video, I'm gonna share with you how I am feeling. I don't want to go. I even tried, I probably threw a little tantrum to my husband, you know, like, I really don't, do I have to do this? I guess I was wanting permission from him to be like, you don't have to do this if you don't want to. And he did. And even when he did, I was like, no, I need to do it. Because again, I don't want to live with regrets. And, you know, I guess my thought is, so they say that there's cramping with the test. And I don't even know why that's the part that scares me. It's not like I haven't dealt with cramps before in my life. I don't deal with PMS cramps very often. I see that personally as a sign of, you know, something's not quite right. And so, you know, on this health journey of mine, I have noticed that my cramps have gone down. So it's not like a typical thing for me. I know women who are like, oh yeah, I cramp every month. And so they felt like the test wasn't that big of a deal. But for me, like, I don't really go through that very often. So it does make me a little nervous. Now, with all that said, I have also had a baby. I had a natural childbirth. I had her at home. And so I kind of feel like if I can do that, like, I can deal with this test. Next up is the test, and obviously I'm not going to get too personal on that and share much video on that part, but when we come back, I will share with you how everything went. This is actually the next day. I just wanted some time to kind of process everything, because after the test, my adrenaline, I guess, was really pumping. I was so shaky, I guess. I don't know why. I guess I was just glad that I'm just one step closer to figuring things out. And I'm really wanting to do this. So this is all going on beginning of November. And I'm really wanting to get all of this sort of doctor's appointments and testings out of the way by Christmas for obvious reasons. I'm glad that that part is over, and that's probably the hardest part, at least for me and the test that I have going on currently. So I'm going to walk you through step by step kind of what happened, and just so you are a little prepared, like mentally prepared for going into an appointment like that. And I think I'm going to do a mix of just my personal experience with it as well as just the facts, because if you are like me and you are wanting to mentally prepare for this procedure, I shouldn't even call it procedure. I think that sounds a little more scary. It's just a test. It takes 10 minutes, if that. So it really isn't a big thing. But when we start Googling, we hear such a variety of stories, some good, some bad, but we tend to cling to the bad stories. And then, of course, if you're going to cling to that, you're going to have a bad experience. It's just like, I view it a little bit as, you know, giving birth. In our culture, there is such fear around having a baby that when it comes time for it, you know, it's almost like we as mothers wear this badge of honor, like to see who had the worst labor. I don't know. With my first, I went through a course called I think it was hypnobirthing. Gosh, it was so long ago. But the concept around that was just like changing the terms that we use around giving birth. You know, labor is another word we use for work, and it has a bit of a negative connotation. So using terms like birthing time and instead of due date, which is like absolute, and if we're not meeting that deadline, you know, things are gonna go wrong. They call it a guess date. And I realize I've kind of gone off on a tangent, but with that hypnobirthing and that preparation I did before giving birth, you know, I had a really positive experience with that. And so I think that we need to change our mindset around certain things and not cling to the negative. This video, I'm not going to really focus on that part of it. So first things first, before your appointment, they recommend you taking Ibuprofen, you know, Advil, Motrin. I'm sure each doctor will be different. Mine recommended, I think it was 200 to 400 milligrams. So I just took a couple about an hour before I was scheduled to go in. I am so grateful. This is such a busy season for my husband, who is a chef, because there's so many different holiday parties that people are planning, and end of the year parties. And so when I could get in for this test so soon, I was like, let's do it. Let's just get it out of the way. And I'm so grateful that he was able to, you know, work half the day to be able to drive me, because we had no idea how I was going to feel after the procedure. We just wanted to be safe. And him and my daughter, they drove me there. They hung out for about an hour. That's how long it took me, but I waited a lot. Took the ibuprofen. It was like a 45-minute drive to get there. So you can imagine the anticipation. And that's what I will say in the end. I think it's more the anticipation and like the, I don't know, the psychological warfare that goes on in your head that makes this test worse than it really is. I don't know if that encourages you at all, but for me, and I think a lot of people, that waiting is the hardest part. I had the 45-minute drive. We were going into the city, which is not very enjoyable for me. And I got there, I don't know how long I waited. I waited quite a bit. I would say probably 45 minutes. And again, that just adds to it. So the first thing they're going to do is they're going to need a urine sample. And the urine sample is just to make sure that you are not pregnant. You obviously don't want to do this test if you are pregnant. So I did a urine sample, and then after that, you know, you will you will lay on the bed that they have set up for you. You'll just wear the top that you're wearing. You'll have to take off your bottoms, and then they, I know some places they'll give you a gown, but they had me cover up with some paper. I probably sat there for 30 minutes just waiting for the nurse and the doctor to come in and do the test. And then once they did come in, I think the whole thing took less than 10 minutes. So what I want to say, and this really helped me as I was going through contractions with my daughter and, you know, behind the hypnobirthing, if you will, I knew going into giving birth that the contractions were not going to last the whole time, that I would have breaks, and that I would just need to, you know, ride the wave. and not tense up and not try and fight it. And I think that helped a lot when I was giving birth, and that I tried to go into that mindset, which is so silly because birth is a whole different experience than taking a dye test, right? You're going through labor or your birthing time for hours and hours on end, where this dye test is 10 minutes. It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. I made it a big deal in my head, and I don't want you to do the same thing as I did. So they're gonna go in, and it's just like, you know, getting a pap smear. What is it, the speculum? That metal thing that just kind of opens you up a little. That for me was probably the most uncomfortable part. It's really weird to be exposed down there in front of a stranger. So I just was very uncomfortable, and it's just an uncomfortable thing that sometimes we need to do. And then they'll position the speculum so that they can go in and put in the catheter and then the dye. Now I will say that the thing I was most nervous about was the dye. That I don't know why. It's so funny because I was bracing myself for that moment, yet the first part of it, so they'll disinfect and then they'll put the speculum in, and then they'll position the catheter, and then they'll add the dye. And they will walk you through each and every step and what they are doing, and they should do that. I was bracing myself for the dye because everything I read, here we go again, right? Everything I read was that was going to be the hardest part, the cramping. People had said it was between a 6 and a 10 as far as like the rating. And so I was like, oh my goodness, this part I am going to have difficulty with. But I also knew that it was going to last like 30 seconds. Now, in retrospect, the hardest part was positioning and getting everything in place. And then when they did start to add the dye, I could feel it, but it really wasn't that bad. And you'll have a slight cramping, it'll gradually go up, and then you'll hit that spot and they'll take it out, and the pain will the cramping will slowly go away. And once the dye is out, there should not be any cramping. Now, obviously, the doctors need to give you informed consent, and so they will tell you all of the risks involved, and you may have cramping afterwards. You know, your doctor will go over that with you. But for me, in the end, I just thought that when they put the dye in, it really wasn't that bad. Now, that's my experience. I realize that everybody is different. Every body is different. So, of course, my experience with it could be different from yours. But I just really wanted to share the facts about it and just some of the emotions I went through, and even some of the things that I did wrong. Like, I probably shouldn't have gone down the rabbit hole of Googling what an HSG test was. Because the week before, my doctor had mentioned it, said I needed it. I had no idea what it was and what they were doing. And I don't know, maybe in retrospect, it would have been better just to go in not knowing. I don't know. But in the end, I really think the anticipation and what goes on in your mind is much worse than the actual procedure. So I do hope that encourages you and gives you a little bit of information. At the end of the appointment, I did have to go and pick up a prescription. I think this is different based on the doctor. Some people will have you take an antibiotic before the procedure. My doctor had me take it my first meal after the procedure or the test. And then some doctors don't even prescribe it at all. It's one of those things where you'll just monitor, make sure that you don't have a fever and really painful cramping, because there is a risk of infection. But please be comforted in the fact that it is very, very rare for that to happen. But, again, it is their job to give you informed consent. It's just funny to think that I was so nervous about the procedure even after I gave birth naturally at home. It's funny how the mind works. It really is. I pray for you if you are going through any sort of fertility journey or recurrent pregnancy loss. It's a hard path to go down, and just know that I am with you and I'm praying for you. I do realize that my channel hasn't really touched base on a lot of fertility stuff, and then all of a sudden it is, but this is kind of just the journey that I'm on right now. And it pains me to hear that there are so many other women dealing with this stuff, and so I just wanted to be a voice for you and hopefully be encouraging for you while you walk this path. And just know that you are not alone. If you're new to this channel, I don't always share my fertility journey. I do share other home-focused topics as well, but I'm so glad you are here. And if you would do me a favor, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe if this is something that resonates with you. Those little things, I know that it takes like a second to do and we don't always think about it, but it does help a channel grow, and I would just be so appreciative of that. Thanks so much for watching, and I will catch you next time. Bye.